If you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to type them in the chat section. I'll be sure to cover them as we're rolling through. And if your question's not able to get answered during the presentation, you've got my contact information on the screen as well. Feel free to reach out. Would be happy to tackle any detailed questions. Okay, so let's run right into it. It's a little bit about myself. I have been focused on revenue management or pricing for the entire duration of my career. Just quickly, in terms of my background, I fell almost immediately into pricing from a parts pricing perspective with Ford Motor. Shifted over into consulting and pricing solutions, a boutique firm. Went back to sell beer as their director of revenue management and helped with pricing strategies to maximize profitability and top line growth. And then back to consulting. So why I wanted to cover this is just to give you an indication that I've been in your shoes from an implementation standpoint or a commercial standpoint, and know the implementation pieces and the complexities that are entailed with the material we'll be covering today. So in terms of what we're going to be going through is what is revenue management. It's a big term. It's heavy. To a lot of people it means different things. So helping walk through that, why it's important, why companies struggle with progressing down the revenue management journey, thinking about how it's changed due to COVID-19 and the new realities that it's presenting. And as we look forward with the recovery and moving out of COVID-19, how should you be thinking about your business and looking to take advantage of the opportunities that are in the market, and not only make sure that you get back to business as usual, but you accelerate and distance your way from the competition. So first off, what is revenue management? It's a big term. What I like to go back to is to think about a lemonade stand. And if we're going to start a lemonade stand, what are some of the questions that we want to ask ourselves? We're going to start asking ourselves questions like, what should my price be? How many flavors should we have? What should our hours be? Should we have different cup sizes? And how should the prices vary by the different cup sizes that we're actually offering? What discounts should we provide? Should we have a loyalty program in place? How do we communicate offers? Do we have multiple locations? Very quickly, this simple lemonade stand where we were going to have a painted sign, have a jug out there, and put a price point up, it gets very, very complicated. And this is exactly what revenue management is. Revenue management is looking at how you answer each of these questions and looking at all of these questions together in a jigsaw manner, and how we answer each of these questions and put those questions together. When we look at the amalgamated responses to those questions, we're maximizing our top line revenue and maximizing our bottom line profitability. So in isolation, how we answer that question may not be optimized, but when we answer these questions all together and look at how they come together, we're maximizing our top and bottom line. And that's really what revenue management's about. Now, as we think about those questions, they're really bucketing under four main areas. One is price. Where should we be setting our price versus the competitive alternatives, and what value are we driving? Two is volume. What levers are we pulling to drive volume within our business? Three is mix. How do we think about shifting volume within our portfolio or changing customers' decisions on what they're buying or where we're selling? And the fourth element is around execution. And we're looking at things on how are we communicating our offers? How are we actually going to market? To look at this a little bit of a different way, we're using the term revenue growth management. And how do people think of revenue? Well, Revenue is price times volume, very simple. We're going to boil that back a little bit and talk about some of the elements that we were talking about on the previous slide. Revenue growth. And how we think about revenue growth, it's your price, and your price is exactly what it sounds like. Where are we positioning our offer versus the competition for the value that we're driving? Number two is the volume. How are we going to drive volume? Thinking about, are we going to put discounts in place? Are we going to decrease price? Are we going to put new offers out there into the market? Third item is the mix. How can we think about shifting what we're selling within the portfolio, or shifting our customers within the portfolio, or shifting where we're actually selling to drive more top line benefit? And then thinking about our execution. How do we actually get those things out there to the market? And the last element, which we've termed as timesing, or which either amplifies the impact of or takes away our impact of, is enablers. And what we think of enablers as is all of the elements that let you bring this to life. So what's your budgeting and planning process? What is your commercial reporting process? Do we have the right forecasting in place? Now, under each of these metrics, there's a whole bunch of things that you can actually be driving to. We're not going to walk through each one, but just to give you a little bit of an understanding of some of the complexity. But the important thing is to have this formula at the back of your mind, that you want to think about revenue growth management, and thinking about how you get that revenue growth. It's price, it's volume, it's mix, and it's execution, and then making sure you have the proper enablers in place to help you drive that. So, what have I basically described? It's really a process. And those elements, how good you are or how poor you are in those areas, it's any process. You can be really good or really bad. And what we see it as is an evolution. And what we're showing here is just a simple continuation. And what we have on the vertical axis is just profit improvement. Along the horizontal axis is what stage in the cycle you're in. And you can see that the profit improvement gets better the farther in the cycle that you're actually at. So let's describe this. The first step in the evolution is chaotic. You can think about this as not having a pricing strategy. You don't have any routine analytics in place. The loudest voice carries the day. There's a lot of table banging. If we look at a decision that we made on Monday, we look at a decision that we made on Wednesday, it might have the exact same input variables, but we're making different decisions. So it's all over the place, chaotic, don't have any control. Second stage is reactive. Usually at this point in time, the sales team is dictating what decisions are being made around revenue growth management. So we'll see things like, we need to close a profit gap. Let's go ahead and increase our prices this quarter. We need to close a sales target gap. Let's go ahead and decrease our prices. Our competition has just decreased prices in this area. Let's go ahead and follow. So it's reactive, but trying to react to either internal needs or external market conditions. Third, we term as defined. So usually at this stage, you're graduating to cost-based pricing, and you're getting very good at activity-based costing, understanding what things cost, and setting your price off that. Set a margin hurdle, and here's where our price needs to be set. And usually finance is controlling the revenue growth management decisions at this point in time and dictating, these are the elements we're going to do due to a certain margin being in place. These are the elements that we're not going to do due to margin being in place. They're kind of seen as a sales prevention department. Step 4 is where we get to proactive. And we're no longer navel gazing, looking internally at the organization. We're externally looking at our customers and our offers, and we're thinking about what's the value-based benefit that we're bringing out there, what are we delivering, how do we position ourselves versus competition, and based on this, where should we position our pricing, what is the customer's willingness to pay, how do we drive top and bottom line improvements from this perspective. Now, that's usually a cross section across the organization where you're working much more in a partnership, sales, marketing, finance, everyone working together. The last step, which is really prescriptive, is where you're getting towards price optimization. And you're looking more at tools that are dictating what you're doing from a revenue growth management perspective to trigger you. Here's when we're going to change our strategy, and here's the keys on what we're going to change our strategy to or where we're going to. Now, that's a very complex process that I just walked you through. Why should I care? Well, this is just a simplified balance sheet. And at a high level, this is the average S&P 500 company from 2019. We've amalgamated this and tried to normalize it. So the average company is doing about $6.5 billion, about $5.3 billion of net revenue. They've got a cost of goods sold about $1.7 billion, fixed costs about $2.4 billion, or they're making about a 19.6% profit margin. Now, as we think about what are the different levers we can pull on this financial statement, well, what's one of the first typical levers that companies look at? One, cost. We can take cost out of our system. So all we've done here is taken the cost down from 1672 to take out 1% of 1655. Your net revenue stays the exact same at 5.3 billion. Your gross margin improves to 3.7 billion roughly, and you can see that the cost improvement drops to the bottom line, and your profit margin moves from 19.6% to 19.8%, or you're realizing about a 1.3% improvement. What's the next lever that we can pull? Well, we can drive more margin, more volume. Let's get 1% more of sales volume. And this is a lot of the focus in pushing our sales team. So if we drive more sales volume, you can see that our gross revenue moves up. Our discounts stay at the same percentage. So they're moving up, but they're remaining at the same percentage, roughly 12 to 13%. Our costs of goods sold move up. Now, our cost of goods sold move up, obviously, because we have to produce that incremental volume. Our fixed costs stay the same, but our profit margin moves from a 19.6% to 19.9%. So we're actually getting a 1.8% improvement over where we were from a base perspective. So again, good. Now, if you think about how many resources you have driving costs out of your system and driving more sales volume every day, it's a lot. And there's a lot of focus on that. Often companies, this is where their focal point is, and they're pushing for improvements. The last lever is if we were able to drive top line and get 1% of more of price. So we're able to take our average unit price from $5,686 to $5,743. What are we able to do? Long story short, you can see that the price moves up, your gross revenue moves up, all of that benefit drops to the bottom line. And the profit margin goes from 19.6% to 20.4%, or it's about a 4.1% improvement. What you see is that price has more leverage on your bottom line than any other lever that you can pull on your financial statement. So knowing that it has more leverage on the bottom line, it's incredibly important that this is not an overlooked lever and that you're putting resources against it and thinking about how to drive that price. What makes it tough? Usually people say, I can do math, understand what you're showing, but if it was, it's pretty tough. Well, companies struggle with this due to some industries are very elastic, very complex businesses. You don't have resources in place. You've got too much data that's available to you. Your offers are very complex. You're not necessarily the market leader. That's kind of internal things that get to you. The other thing is we often find that there's divergent opinions around revenue management throughout the organization. So from a sales perspective, if we lowered the cost, we could sell much more. Marketing, hey, we're creating all this value. All you need to do is sell the value. Finance, we're doing the math. It's simple. Just increase the price. Or operations, we're really busy. You know what? We should increase the price so we can decrease it. We've got tons of capacity. Let's lower the price. So we've got all of these structural barriers to us. We've got all these internal opinions, and it's very, very complicated. The problem is that looking at the previous slide and just how much leverage that revenue management can have on your financial statements, it's just simply something you can't overlook. Now, taking it back to basic economics, we've got a curve here. Along the vertical axis is volume, along the horizontal axis is price. If we have one offer in the market, basically and we've got a demand curve on here, the one offer at one price, all of that revenue that we command is this blue revenue in this box. Now, what's our missing opportunity? Our missing opportunity is the white area under that curve. Now, if we were to have multiple offers, multiple prices, multiple price points that we put those offers into the market, we're capturing more of that white space. So we have some premium customers that are willing to pay for a higher cost with more options, more features, and we have some discount customers in there as well. Now we know that, especially knowing that a fair amount of Revenue Collective members are B2B software organizations or B2B technology, we know in your industry this is relatively pervasive. And this is just an example of Slack. We can see multiple offers that they've got. They've got a freemium version. They've got a standard version where you can, on the freemium, you can only do 1-to-1. Standard, you can do up to 15. If you go to Plus, you get guaranteed uptime. And if you go to Enterprise Grid, there's new levels of security based with it. But you can see that they're creating these multiple offers for different customer segments, different price points. Now, all that's a quick introduction, but let's talk about what's happened. Well, COVID's happened. It's made things a lot tougher, or more complicated, I should say. In the short term, what's changed at a high level? And I'm sure your organizations have been talking about this a lot. Households are at home. Companies are trying to find new ways to reach them. Customers are shifting to purchase cost-effective products due to sometimes there's budget constraints that are occurring or income's not necessarily there. And this is causing shifts in what's being bought out there, both in the high end of products and the low end of products or services. There's an increased focus on safety and reliability that could be creating some premiumization opportunities. There's a rise in contactless service, so companies are having to figure out how to install in new and different ways. And a lot of people are looking at much different and flexible payment options to hold customers in longer and minimize churn, not to let this blip in the radar really affect these customers that they're going to be trying to recapture, that they're going to have to go and chase to recapture, because we know if we hold the customer, it's much more valuable than losing a customer and having to go recapture that customer, or more costly, I should say. So knowing that a lot of you are software focused, we're going to continue that example throughout the presentation. We've got these trends happening: social distancing, lockdown, work from home, contactless services. So what's great about that is some digital products and services are actually growing or have seen a natural tide rising. You guys, I'm sure you're almost using it on a daily basis. Collaboration software like Slack and Zoom, to be able to meet with your teams, it's becoming essential. E-commerce solutions are taking off in online shopping, so you can go in ahead and procure the products that you're looking for, not only from a B2C perspective, also from a B2B perspective. E-payment is becoming much more important, and innovations around those e-payments. And digital entertainment platforms are growing because people are at home. Obviously, live entertainment isn't as pervasive as it was. So gaming platforms are taking off. Again, we're at a high level. What's that mean at a lower level? One, you may think that this natural tide shift, that all these consumers getting into the digital products would lift everyone. Not necessarily. You see that there's a group of companies that are experiencing increased sales. Usually, these are companies that are related to, that are supporting work from home. Then we see another cross-section of software companies that are seeing flat sales. So fintech, cloud-based, infrastructure technology services, they're benefiting from business continuity that needs to go on. Their business is relatively flat. And then, which might not have necessarily as hit as yet, but is growing, we're seeing that some companies, either in the short term or more in long term, as they're looking to contracts and renewals, are seeing some threat of a decrease in sales. And what's that being driven by? We're seeing that certain industry sectors, like retail and travel and software linked to those, they're falling. Customers just can't pay in those areas, and they're experiencing natural declines. Companies that who are high touch and require on-site implementation, they can't do it because they just can't get into the customers. Companies that are heavily focused on B2B startups are challenged because these organizations that were experiencing a natural uplift, they are now focusing on maintaining cash and looking at their purchases in new and different ways. And as a result of this, in some cases, software purchases are declining and becoming more selective in their purchases. So we're going to see an increase in cancellations and downgrades. So what's the impact of all this? Reduced new bookings, decreased pipeline volumes, longer sales cycle, increased cancellations, decrease in cash collections. So a lot of threats are coming across from a COVID-19 perspective. Where does that leave you as an organization as you're thinking about it? Well, let's think about where we've moved as an organization. Really, pre-COVID-19, we'll say we were operating as business as usual. We've gone through COVID-19, and a lot of companies have kind of hit this trough, right? Or here's kind of the new normal. Where are we now? And depending where you're sitting, which country you're in, which industry you're in, you're looking at moving out of this. And some companies, as they're moving out of this, yes, will go bankrupt, and we've seen a couple of very big names go through that. Some are preparing for reduced operations or a new normal. Some are looking to get back to the business as usual. The best are looking at, well, how can we turn this into an opportunity, or how can we get to that accelerated growth? And that's what we're going to be focusing on today. This is a piece that McKinsey actually put together just recently, and it's 2x2. Along the vertical axis is margin impact. The higher you sit, the more of a margin impact it's going to have on you. And then across the horizontal axis is the time to impact. What actually, obviously you're chasing the top right corner, what actually has the greatest impact on your business in the short term to go ahead and move your results is pricing and promotions, which is essentially linked to what we've been talking about: revenue growth management, analytically driven sales, and marketing and sales productivity. So those elements are what we're going to be talking about today. And the 3 steps that you need to think about going through from a process perspective to make sure you're graduating on to that accelerated growth. One, looking at our base, how do we protect our base? Secure and stabilize our top line. Number two, needs have changed. How do we understand that, or what is the process we need to go through to understand that? And then number three, with that understanding, we need to develop new offers and go to market with those new offers and to make sure we continue to be relevant to our customers. So we're going to step through each one of these. First, and call this secure and stabilize the top line. Looking at your renewals that are coming up, what you want to do is you want to try to stretch these as much as possible. The more you can increase your retention around customers, you decrease your top line risk. So as we're thinking about that, if the customer has typically been on a 3-year cycle, if you can get them into a 5-year cycle, you want to think about how you can incentivize that. What are some of the KPIs you're going to be looking at to making sure you're actually actioning this strategy? One, looking at things like your renewal rate. What's your average contract duration? Is it going up or is it going down? If you're looking at customer lifetime value, which you should be from a software standpoint, what's our average customer lifetime value? Are we maintaining that or are we increasing that? The second piece, you're going to have some customers that are going to ask you for accommodations. Some of the most frequent accommodations that we're seeing is extended billing cycles. Now, the easy mantra would be to say, no, it's against our policies. What you need to consider, and this is where having a good understanding of your customer lifetime value is important, is what's your cost to actually acquire a customer and how long do they typically stay with you? Thinking about accommodating some of these requests, but especially on the customers that you know are going to have a higher customer lifetime value. So the KPI you want to be looking at here is your cancellation rate. And you want to try to be holding it, if you had an average cancellation rate of 7%, trying to hold that flat. The last element is thinking about and this is going to probably be more frequent than even payment terms, is customers asking you for price accommodations. Now, the biggest, in the short term, as a knee-jerk reaction, the biggest mistake that we see customers making, the biggest mistake to customers is just granting wholesale price decreases. One, peanut buttering that across your line, or number two, putting that into a customer with no conditionality against it. So start to think about how you can put in those price decreases, but in those areas that you actually need them, and there's a whole process to determine that, but put them in with conditions behind them. So as the customer turns or as the situation turns, your price can continue to move up and you get back to where you are, so you're not locking in that price decrease. Now, obviously, your KPI against this will be where your average price is sitting. Now, this is a lot of blocking and tackling, and it's in the short term, and it's often hitting the team very quickly. What you want to think about to action this is setting up a cross-functional team to be able to support on the above initiatives. Because honestly, your marketing, sales, finance, and ops team all need to be working in parallel to be able to action this. So this is the first step, just securing your baseline. Second step, customers' needs are changing. One, we know willingness to pay has changed. What we're showing on the left side here is where along the vertical axis is your customer's willingness to pay. You can look at that as their price sensitivity, and you can see it's all over the map here. Some customers are willing to pay really high prices, indicating on the saying higher on this graph. Some customers not very much. And then along the horizontal axis, you can think of as your number of customers or your size of customers. Now, what you see happening to the right is the willingness to pay. And I know we've got a shotgun blast here, but the shotgun blast is just decreased, right? So customers are a little bit more price sensitive. To what scale or range, it's important that you lock in on that. Next, the revenue profile's changed, or the number of customers has changed out there. So we're showing pre-COVID here. Let's pretend that we were selling to 5 different sizes of business. We had startups, small businesses, medium businesses, large and international. The majority of our business was done with startups. Now, post-COVID or during COVID, that revenue profile has changed. We know startups have been hit hardest. They've been shutting doors, they're cutting costs to try to weather the cash flow storm. Small and medium business are actually, from a software perspective, should be growing as a segment because they have to migrate to these digital offerings. They have to get at their customers in new and different ways, so they're becoming more important. So we can see that they're actually growing here. And large and international businesses, relatively stable, but it's necessitating changes in terms of how much volume you're doing where. As well, implementation needs have changed. On-premise versus cloud versus how you were conducting your business before. Features needs, and again, we're thinking about software here. Maybe customers' needs around the features and what they need to conduct their business around those features have shifted. And then payment preferences have changed. And usually what we're seeing from a payment preference perspective is moving from flat fee to subscription or annual subscription to monthly subscription. At the end of the day, what we're seeing for certain segments of customers is a view to minimize the upfront costs and to gain that buy-in. With all of these elements changing, what's critical is you need to resegment your customers. Now, when I'm saying resegment your customers, you're not necessarily saying, here's how many big customers we had before, and here's how many we have now, or here's how many in what industry that we had. You really want to go through a behavioral segmentation. So you want to think about behavioral metrics such as, this is how widely they buy across my portfolio. This is how often they're contacting me. This is what type of support that they're requiring. They've looked for a price decrease from me. They've actually cut their licenses from me. And what we're trying to understand, because every customer is different, but their behaviors are a much better predictor of their purchase habits and behaviors, and it'll help us understand what offer we need to fit to them. As we're going through, since you're taking the time to go through this segmentation, also think about any new variables that you can capture. If they're looking for adjusted payment terms, if they're looking for new features, and look to external data as well. Trying to think to bring in social media sentiment, all of those kind of elements. So we're going to go ahead, create a new segmentation. What are we going to do with this segmentation? Step back with where we were pre-COVID-19. I'm going to take a little bit of time on this slide just to make sure that everyone understands it. Pretend we've got 5 segments, segment A, B, C, D, and E. And I want you to define those segments behaviorally, as I was talking about before. So segment A, these are large-scale customers. They require full implementation, customization support. We actually do consulting for them too. So with segment A, they have certain needs. One of their needs is going to be price, and this is their first line here. And either they're going to be highly sensitive to price or very low in terms of price sensitivity. Now we have them as low on the sensitivity graph here. Next, and I don't want you to think that these have to be the needs, but we've define what their critical needs are. And these are different across each of the segments. They don't have to be, they're not necessarily the same on what's important to that segment. But what's important is that this is how that segment looks at comparing your offers to the next best alternative, which could be competitive or could be within your own portfolio. But these are the things that are important to that customer. And you're able to rank out what's important to them, what's not important to them. So we've got these 5 unique segments where we can visibly see here that their needs around price and around those other value differentiating attributes are statistically different, drastically different. And again, we're in kind of pre-COVID world here. So knowing that we have these 5 segments, we've got 5 offers. And maybe one segment needs 2 offers, but we've got 5 offers that we've got here that are catered towards them and actually specifically catered towards their needs. And each of these offers is driven towards a certain segment. So for example, the offer A, where we have the lowest, segment A, where we have the lowest price sensitivity, they should be at the highest price segment, and we make sure that we have a premium offer that's associated with what their needs are. Now, post-COVID, what's happened? Long story short, we look at the segments. We had 5 segments and they were all equally dispersed. We've actually gone down to 4 segments now. And you can see certain segments have gotten more important to us in terms of size, and certain segments have gotten smaller. First change. Second change, if we look at these price sensitivities and these needs, these dots, they've shifted drastically in terms of what actual segments needs are, how they're making decisions, what they need out of their product, how they're going to look at you versus competition. Now, given that, we have these 5 existing offers on the left-hand side. We know that each of these offers, and ideally, each of these offers were catered towards those segment needs. Now, moving forward, these offers, given that the sizes have changed on the customers, is one thing, and we might have offers that are no longer relevant, or we might need multiple offers where we only had one offer before, is one thing due to the segment sizes changing. But number 2, the needs have changed. What was in an offer before, due to the needs changing, might not be relevant. So the key thing is that offers need to be redesigned. What our new offers needs to look like, not necessarily sure now, but those offers need to go through a redesign so we can now fit this new model. And it's not necessarily that we're looking at what's happening during COVID, depending on how optimistic you are for us getting out of COVID, but what is the new world going to look like, our new normal? How do we position for that and our customers moving into that with our new offers? So how do we go ahead and build those new offers? Or an example of how we would build those. Pre-COVID, here's our segment. And again, this is going to be personalized for your business, thinking about what are those behavioral attributes that truly differentiate that customer segment and how you can look at them as unique from another customer segment. We've got segment A. They are about 20% of our business. They're mainly startups. They're under $3 million in revenue, about 20 employees, under 2 years in business. They're private businesses usually. We've done some great elasticity work. We know they're willing to put out about $180 to $220 a year. They use about 5 licenses, 0 to 15 licenses a year, work from the office, and here's kind of their unique needs. So we've got a standard offer. We give them about $199 per year on a license fee, no remote collaboration, and they get feature 1 and 2. Now, what shifted? Segment A actually shifted into 2 groups. We've got a group within segment A where their revenue drastically decreased. They went through downsizing of their employees. Their willingness to pay is pretty bad right now. They're going through a big cash crunch. We've got this other segment that they've actually gone up in terms of revenue. They've grown. They're finding new ways to reach customers. Their willingness to pay is about the same, but they're looking for more features. As they're growing, reaching customers in new ways, they're looking for more features. How do we drive that down to the offers? Well, this first segment A1 that's been created, that's Cash Crunch, has their revenue cut in half. What we're going to introduce for them is a light version. We're going to, because we're going to lose this account or these licenses, we're going to introduce a freemium version, and not, whether freemium is right or not. It's very specific. This is just an example. We're going to allow remote collaboration, because whereas they were working in the office before, they're now working at home and they're remote. And whereas they were enjoying 2 features before, we're going to cut back one of those features. So we still make sure they're interacting with our product, and as they turn the corner, we fully expect them to move on back, but there's a trade-off to the customer. Second segment, we know they're in a little bit of a different spot in terms of their business growing. We're actually introducing a price increase to them. We are introducing remote collaboration to them, and we're adding in additional features to fit their needs. So what's critical here is, one, if we were servicing segment A1 and segment A2 with the old offer, we're not meeting anyone's needs. By having a more in-tune view of what segment A1 and segment A2 needs, we're actually coming with relevant offers that is helping us drive both that top line and bottom line. And as you think back to that curve that we were talking about, we're capturing more of that white space. Let's go through another example. Now, this is segment D. Before COVID, this is a large-scale organization. They're about 20% of our customer base out there. $10 billion in revenue plus, 1,000 employee count. They've been in business 20 plus years. They're public companies. They're willing to pay anywhere from $950 to $1,100 a license. They've got more than 100 users, work from the office primarily, and we've got kind of a fully loaded package for them. $1,000 a year. We don't really have a remote collaboration. It's limited to some employees within their package, and then we give them all the features that we've got on the table. What's going through, what's happening for this segment? Well, in terms of importance, they've actually grown, because we see that there's that shakeout that's happening. The other thing that's happening is, even though we're seeing that their revenues are holding roughly flat, we're seeing that we're experiencing some willingness to pay pushback. At the same time, we're also seeing that they are asking for more features. Where are we going to from here? Well, we know that their willingness to pay has decreased somewhat, but they're asking for more features. We also know that they went from office work to home work. Well, our goal for this group of customers, they're high value customers. We want to maintain loyalty. So we are going to hold our price point flat. We are going to move to everyone having remote collaboration. And actually, we're going to increase the amount of features that are driving. So what are we trying to drive here? Well, we're trying to make sure that these customers don't shop, and that we're holding these high value customers to us. We're also trying not to degrade our revenue, because we know this customer still has the propensity to pay given where they're sitting. What's critical is that we have a good view on what these customer segments needs, how those have shifted, and that we're making sure that our offers fit those needs. Now, I'm showing this from a very high level. There's a lot of analysis that can help you understand what's those price levels that you need to be hitting, what are those features, or what are the elements of the offer that need to be there to make sure you're packaging this correctly and you're making sure that the customers are making the correct trade-offs. is this relevant? Are we seeing this happen out here? Just a couple of real world examples. Monday.com, they've started to introduce kind of must-have features just because they see the shifts. So introduce whiteboards for no cost, image annotations, online document collaboration, embedded Zoom calls that you can run right within their software. Shopify, which, if you're not familiar, it's a marketplace that allows shoppers to bring their offerings to B2C or set up an online portal, essentially. They saw the needs shifting. What did they do about that? Well, they increased their length of trial from 15 to 90 days to incentivize new customers. So they saw a segment of customers that had this risk profile and were able to introduce a relevant offering that would be able to access that level of that revenue that was kind of pent up demand there. They also created Shopify Capital, which actually offers loans to stores. So they were able to identify a need and they were able to monetize that need while at the same time addressing the customer's needs. So it's exactly what revenue management's about, right? Build the top and the bottom line at the same time by understanding your customers at a deeper level and being able to introduce those offers that cater to those needs. And likewise, much like Monday.com, we see Cisco introducing a whole bunch of stuff for free. Now, we've got these, where I want you to think about is we've got these new offers. And we've gone through all the heavy work. We've looked at our offers before. We've done the segmentation. We've got our new offers. So pretend we had 5 offers before. We have 7 offers. Knowing that, we've got our group of customers within our portfolio and also those that are coming in every day. You want to start taking those offers and laying them in and thinking about what is our commercial execution strategy. So again, at 2x2, I apologize. I know consultants always use 2x2. Very simply, we've got our average transactional value on the vertical axis, average customer lifetime on the horizontal axis. Top quadrant, these are the customers that are high value and that have stuck a long time. What do we want to do? We want to maintain loyalty with these customers. Those that are to the left, high value but short lifetime, well, we want to increase the duration on those customers, have them move to the right. Those that we've had around for a long time and are very low transaction value, how do we get their transaction value up? And those that are on the left, low priority. But what you want to think of, you want to think about the offers that you've put together. Then you want to map your segments, your behavioral segments that you've taken a long time to put together onto this map. And you want to take these offers that you have and you want to go ahead and also think about these monetization tactics and overlay the two. So and as you're overlaying the two, you really come up with a commercial execution strategy. So for account number 1, we know they're falling in maintain loyalty. We are going to be offering them this offer right here along with this offer, and here's why it makes sense to maintain loyalty. So you're doing really a full 360 activation, and what that does, by knowing you have the right offer and you're monetizing that in the right way, you're not only meeting their needs, you're driving your top line and also your bottom line. Now, this is a lot of work what I'm describing. And the discussion can be, is this necessary? Will things go back to normal eventually? Hey, we've got these existing offers. These existing offers have worked. Should we just, we go through the trough and we'll get back to business as usual? Well, how do we think about that? It's a bet, right? Or you're gambling. And do you really want to gamble on this? Given that customers' needs have changed, given that you have aggressive competition in the market, you're seeing all these seismic shifts. If you're just sitting with the new with your same old offers, you're gambling. And it's like kind of like playing Powerball. And the odds of winning on Powerball, as I'm sure you guys know, it's a pretty long shot. So are you willing to take that long bet, or do you go through this work to make sure you have the insurance policy in place to make sure your organization is positioned in the right manner? As we're describing that, it's really, where do you want to be? We've gone through this trough. You're really here now, coming out of COVID, and you're making a decision on where you want to go and putting in these what commercial processes need to be put in. And obviously, everyone wants to accelerate growth. So if I leave you with one takeaway from today, knowing where you were pre-COVID, ideally, you had this granular an understanding of your customers, what their sizes were, what their needs were, and you were fitting their offers to those needs. Now that there has been such a seismic shift in needs out there, really forcing yourselves to do the due diligence, go through, understand the different customer segments and their sizes, how their needs have shifted, and then make sure that you can design offers that fit those needs. By doing that, you're going to make sure you maximize your top and your bottom line, and that you're insulated. And not only that you're insulated, that you continue to grow out of the pandemic, and that it's really created new opportunities, because there's going to be a lot of organizations that don't move and aren't really ready to go ahead and react to the new competitive threats and new companies that are coming out there with relevant offers that more fully meet their customer needs. And it's going to be hard to recapture, if at all. I want to thank everyone for taking the time to go through this presentation today. Really appreciate your time, and want to thank Revenue Collective for giving us this opportunity to share all this data with you. If you have any questions or concerns, again, please feel free. Our contact details are below. Would be happy to address them. Thank you for taking the time, and I hope you take this to heart. Take care. Bye-bye.